We trust that through Jesus, God will bring those who have passed away, as we believe in his death and resurrection. While many often view death as a sorrowful event, Padre Pio saw it as a liberation from prison or the start of a long-awaited journey home. His entire existence was focused on achieving heaven. What if I told you that he experienced a startling vision just before his passing? Indeed, moments before Padre Pio was called to join God, he uttered words that left everyone around him in shock. This vision occurred shortly before his death in 1968. In the final days leading up to his passing, Padre Pio's health severely declined. Despite being frail and gravely ill, he was determined to continue hearing confessions. He wished to die standing, performing his duties until the very end. After a day filled with prayer and ministry, he appeared to be pushing himself to his physical limits, perpetually anticipating death. When saying good night, Padre Pio frequently asked his Capuchin brothers to remember him in their prayers, as he was uncertain if he would live to see the next morning. Padre Pio was not afraid of death, but he felt its presence looming over him, ready to claim him at any moment. Several months before he passed away, he requested that an image of Saint Joseph be placed near his cell. His fellow friars observed that he would pause before the picture each day, gazing at it in silence. It was only later that they discovered Padre Pio had been praying daily to Saint Joseph for a peaceful death. Several Capuchins recounted that for weeks leading up to Padre Pio's death, the atmosphere at the monastery of Our Lady of Grace underwent a profound change. The hallways, rooms, common areas, and the monastery itself seemed to be enveloped by an extraordinary, almost otherworldly silence. This mystical quiet was palpable to all who lived there, though none knew at the time that Padre Pio's departure from this world was imminent. As the end of his life drew near, Padre Pio devoted himself ever more deeply to prayer. Prayer had always been the cornerstone of his existence, from the solitary prayers he learned as a child in Pietrelcina to the fervent recitation of Our Father in his cell during his final hours. Throughout his life, whether in moments of temptation, joy, trials, or illness, Padre Pio turned to prayer. It was the foundation of his entire being, infusing every action and thought. In many ways, Padre Pio had always anticipated the conclusion of his earthly journey. He yearned for the day when he could return to his true home in heaven and be united with God for eternity. This deep longing is evident in a letter he wrote to Padre Agostino, in which he expressed his weariness with life on earth. "Living here below is wearisome to me, my dear Father," he wrote. "It is such a bitter torment to live in exile that I can hardly go on any longer. The thought that at any moment I could lose Jesus terrifies me in a way I cannot explain." Not long before his passing, Padre Pio spoke to his superiors, asking them to pray for him. He confessed, "When my time comes to leave this life, if my heavenly mother is not there to hold my hand, how will I have courage?" These words revealed the depth of his faith and his reliance on divine comfort and guidance. In the early hours of September 23rd, Padre Pio made his final confession and renewed his Franciscan vows. Despite his extreme weakness, which made speaking difficult, he managed to utter the words Jesus and Mary while clutching his rosary. This final act of devotion encapsulated his lifelong commitment to his faith and his unwavering trust in the divine. As the mystical silence continued to pervade the monastery, it became clear to those around him that Padre Pio was ready to meet his God, his soul imbued with the prayers that had sustained him throughout his life. Then, around 2:30 a.m., Padre Pio suddenly showed a brief moment of alertness. The saint, who had experienced numerous supernatural events throughout his life, seemed to be perceiving something unseen by those around him. He managed to utter, "I see two mothers," followed by a whispered, "Maria," before passing away. The meaning behind his mention of two mothers remains a topic of speculation. One interpretation is that he was referring to his spiritual mother, Mary, the Mother of God, and his biological mother. The Church is also considered a mother, though how this would manifest in such a vision is unclear. His final word, Maria, could obviously refer to the Blessed Virgin Mary, but it might also have been a reference to his biological mother, who was also named Maria. Regardless, it is fitting that a man who experienced so many mystical events would end his life with a vision of such significance. In the months leading up to his death, Padre Pio's stigmata began to fade, starting with the wounds on his feet. The Capuchin attending him noted that the bleeding from these wounds had significantly lessened. The bandages, which once needed frequent changing due to heavy blood stains, were now much less soiled. By September 22, 1968, the day before his death, his left palm still bore a raised scab. During Mass that morning, 2 scales fell from his hand. When doctors examined Padre Pio's body after his death, they found that the stigma on his hands, feet, and sides had completely vanished. His skin had healed, showing no scars where the wounds had been. The skin appeared as smooth and unblemished as that of a newborn. Additionally, the doctor reported a beautiful fragrance of orange blossoms filling the room, adding a final touch of mystery and grace to the passing of this extraordinary man. He had often detected the distinctive fragrance when near Padre Pio. As they stood together beside Padre Pio's lifeless body, a scab detached and fell from his left hand, marking the final visible sign of the stigmata he had borne for 50 years. Padre Pio appeared serene and beautiful in death. A rosary was placed in his hands, accompanied by a crucifix and the rule of St. Francis, while his priestly purple stole was draped over his shoulders. Air Force and police helicopters flew overhead, showering the immense crowd below with flowers and prayer cards. It is estimated that 100,000 people attended Padre Pio's funeral mass. His body was interred in a granite crypt directly beneath the main altar of the church. "I will be able to help you more from heaven than I can on earth," Padre Pio often reassured those who sought his guidance. True to his word, he has continued to assist his spiritual children from heaven, touching lives around the globe. On September 22nd, Padre Pio was exceedingly weak. That day, the church was overflowing with members of his worldwide prayer groups who had come to San Giovanni Rotondo for an international prayer group congress. Padre Pio celebrated Mass that morning, expressing his gratitude for the prayer groups and celebrating their recent official approval and recognition by the Holy Office in Rome. It brought him great joy to know that his prayer groups were thriving and solidly established. After the Mass, as he was leaving the altar, Padre Pio nearly collapsed. Several Capuchins who were assisting at the Mass quickly moved to support him and prevent him from falling. Looking out over the sea of people, Padre Pio, in a frail and trembling voice, addressed them as "my children," his love and concern for them evident even in his final moments. Later, Padre Pio went to a window of the monastery to greet and bless the prayer group members gathered in the piazza below. He was so frail that he had to be supported by 2 of his Capuchin brothers. That evening, around 9 p.m., Padre Pio used the intercom to summon Padre Pellegrino to his room. Padre Pellegrino, who alternated evening duties with Padre Honor and Padre Mariano, responded to the call and found Padre Pio in bed, his eyes red with tears. Padre Pio had called because he wanted to know the time. With a handkerchief, Padre Pellegrino gently dried Padre Pio's tears and told him the time. After ensuring that Padre Pio was all right, he returned to his room. In his final moments, Padre Pio said, "If the Lord calls me today, ask the brothers to forgive me for all the trouble I have been to them, and ask them and all my spiritual children to pray for my soul." Padre Pio then expressed his desire to renew his religious vows. He solemnly vowed, "I, Padre Pio of Pietrelcina, vow and promise to Almighty God, to the Blessed Virgin Mary, to our Holy Father, St. Francis, to all the saints, and to you, Father, to observe all the days of my life the rule of the Friars Minor confirmed by Pope Honorius, and to live in obedience, without property, and in chastity." Despite his severe arthritis and being 81 years old, which left him stooped and bent, Padre Pio's commitment to his faith and his vows remained unwavering. His frailty in those final hours did not diminish the strength of his spirit as he continued to seek comfort in his faith and devotion until the very end. Suddenly, Padre Pio felt a wave of illness wash over him. Though he wished to return to his room, he was too weak to stand. His face turned pale, and he grew increasingly frail with each passing moment. He began to softly repeat, "Jesus, Mary," over and over, his voice growing fainter. As he grew weaker, Padre Pio's attention fixed on a picture hanging on the wall. He inquired about the identity of the people in the photograph. A nearby father responded, "Those are photographs of your mother and father." Padre Pio, however, insisted, "But I see two mothers." After speaking of seeing two mothers, his condition rapidly declined. He broke out into a cold sweat, and his lips turned blue. Within 10 minutes, a doctor arrived and quickly assessed the situation, realizing that Padre Pio was experiencing a severe bronchial asthma attack. The doctor administered an injection and provided him with oxygen in an attempt to alleviate his distress. Despite these efforts, it was clear that Padre Pio's health was critically failing, underscoring the profound spiritual and physical struggles he faced in his final moments. In an attempt to ease Padre Pio's labored breathing, doctors worked tirelessly to assist him. Meanwhile, a Capuchin brother kneeled beside him, praying for Our Father and Hail Mary. Together, they repeated the devout invocation, "Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, I give you my heart and my soul. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, assist me in my last agony. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, may my soul peacefully expire in you." The holy oils were prepared, and Father Pio administered the last rites to Padre Pio, who remained fully conscious and aware of everything happening around him. Padre Pio's feet and hands were growing cold, and he was perspiring heavily. When the doctors realized he was having a heart attack, they administered an injection directly into his heart. With his eyes closed, Padre Pio continued to silently repeat, "Jesus, Mary." Towards the end, although he could no longer make any sound, his lips still formed the words. A Capuchin brother called out to him, "Padre, Padre." He opened his eyes one last time to look at his dear brothers. At 2:30 a.m. on September 23, 1968, with his rosary clasped in his hands, Padre Pio gently bowed his head and passed away. 2 days prior, on September 20th, 1968, Padre Pio celebrated his last Holy Mass. This day marked the 50th anniversary of his Stigmata. For Padre Pio, it was meant to be like any other day dedicated to Mass, prayer, and service to the Lord. However, for his spiritual children from around the world, it was a significant and emotional occasion. Many had traveled great distances to be present for this anniversary. The Mass on September 20th took place at the usual early hour of 5 a.m., with the church filled to capacity. Many attendees had to stand outside due to the large crowd. In accordance with Padre Pio's wishes, there were no speeches, festivities, or celebrations. The only exception to his humble request was the hundreds of deep red roses that adorned the church sanctuary, adding a touch of beauty to the solemn event. The crucifix in the choir loft, where Padre Pio received the Stigmata on September 20th, 1918, was adorned with beautiful red roses. Everyone present at the Mass was deeply moved by Padre Pio's humility, sincerity, and profound faith. He did not just celebrate the Mass, he lived it, reliving the Passion of Christ. His face expressed the pain he shared with Christ. His eyes would close, his face contoured in agony, and his lips would tremble. Often, he was seen wiping tears from his eyes with a handkerchief. In obedience to his superiors, Padre Pio sat during the Mass and faced the congregation. Despite lasting only half an hour, the Mass left a profound impression on all who attended. Just a day later, Padre Pio passed away. The news of his death spread rapidly, shocking and grieving people worldwide. No one had anticipated his death on September 23rd, and his passing left a void in the hearts of many. In his hometown of Pietrelcina, the bells of the parish church tolled every half hour in mourning. Many who had come to attend the 50th anniversary Mass of Padre Pio's Stigmata, as well as the International Prayer Group Congress, were present for his funeral. It seemed as though divine providence had arranged for Padre Pio's spiritual children from around the globe to be near at the time of his passing. There were several signs that Padre Pio was aware of the time and date of his death. In 1966, he told his niece, Pia Foran Pinelli, "I will not be alive in 2 years. indicating he would die in 1968. He also told his friend, Petruo Cuino, that he would pass away in his 81st year, which he did. Padre Pio was very close to Father Onorato Marucci, who assisted him during the last 3 years of his life. When Father Onorato had to travel to Montecatini, Padre Pio's premonition about his death and the divine orchestration of events surrounding his final days were evident. In his final hours, surrounded by the prayers and support of his Capuchin brothers and spiritual children, Padre Pio demonstrated the same faith and dedication that had characterized his entire life. His passing was a testament to his unwavering devotion and the profound impact he had on those around him. The miraculous events and deep spirituality that marked his life continued to resonate, leaving a legacy that would inspire many for years to come. Shortly before Padre Pio's passing, he said to Father Onorato Marucci, "I beg you to return as soon as possible," indicating his desire to have his loved ones close at the time of his death. Padre Pio also told his spiritual daughter, Josephine Bau, that he would die when the crypt in the Church of Our Lady of Grace was built. He was aware of the Capuchins' plans to construct a crypt for his burial. However, he expressed that he preferred a simple grave over a specially made crypt. The construction of the new Church of Our Lady of Grace was completed in 1959, which caused Josephine Bau to fear that this might signal Padre Pio's imminent death. Despite the completion of the new church, the building of Padre Pio's crypt was delayed for several years. Eventually, Padre Pio passed away, 16 hours after the crypt's completion. An even more surprising story involves a woman from Catania, Sicily, who visited San Giovanni Rotondo on September 8, 1968. She made her confession and expressed a fervent desire to see Padre Pio, even if just for a moment, and to kiss his hand. At the time, her wish seemed almost impossible to fulfill due to the large number of pilgrims present and Padre Pio's busy schedule. The woman explained that she had traveled a long distance from Sicily, sacrificing much to reach the monastery. She was poor and did not have enough money to stay overnight in a hotel, necessitating her return to Sicily that same day. Her lifelong dream had been to see Padre Pio, but financial constraints had always prevented her from making the trip. A few days before her visit, she had a vivid dream that strengthened her resolve. Against all odds, her desire was fulfilled. When she arrived, she miraculously managed to see Padre Pio, who allowed her to kiss his hand. This encounter was a profound moment for the woman, exemplifying the mysterious and often miraculous ways Padre Pio touched the lives of those who sought his intercession. These events surrounding Padre Pio's final days reflect his deep spiritual connection and the sense of divine timing that accompanied his life. His awareness of his impending death and the desire to have his loved ones close highlight his humility and the profound love he had for his spiritual children. The remarkable story of the Sicilian woman underscores the enduring legacy of Padre Pio's compassion and the miraculous nature of his ministry. In her dream, Padre Pio told the woman, "If you want to see me, come to San Giovanni Rotondo immediately, because in a few days I will die." Determined to fulfill this vision, she borrowed money for her travel expenses. Many doubted her story, suspecting she fabricated it just to meet Padre Pio. However, her tears and sincerity moved a priest, who decided to take her to meet Padre Pio. The woman kneeled down, waiting anxiously. As Padre Pio passed by, he stopped, gazed at her with great tenderness, and spoke to her. She was profoundly moved when he placed his hands on her head and blessed her. With tears in her eyes, she thanked him from the depths of her heart for making their meeting possible. Just 15 days later, Padre Pio passed away. Another poignant story involves a man named Gino Pin and his family, who attended the 50th anniversary Mass of Padre Pio's Stigmata. Gino was deeply devoted to Padre Pio and was a tireless advocate for the Padre Pio prayer groups in Bella, Italy. After meeting Padre Pio, Gino returned to the monastery to speak with Father Alberto. Overwhelmed with emotion, Gino explained that his daughter, Maria Pia, had been admitted to the hospital in very serious condition. The doctors suspected she had a tumor or possibly peritonitis. These events illustrate the profound connections and miraculous occurrences that surrounded Padre Pio in his final days. The story of the woman from Sicily highlights the extraordinary ways Padre Pio continued to touch lives, even as his own life drew to a close. Her dream and subsequent journey, culminating in a deeply personal blessing from Padre Pio, underscore the sense of divine orchestration often associated with his ministry. Similarly, Gino Pin's devotion and his distress over his daughter's health illustrate the deep faith and reliance on Padre Pio's intercession that characterized so many of his followers. The emotional intensity of these encounters, set against the backdrop of Padre Pio's approaching death, reflects the enduring impact of his spiritual legacy. Padre Pio's ability to connect with and comfort his followers, even in his final days, remains a testament to his profound faith and the extraordinary grace with which he lived his life. These stories, filled with personal miracles and deep emotional resonance, continue to inspire and affirm the enduring power of his spiritual presence. The following morning, Maria Pia's condition had worsened significantly. Gino, deeply concerned, debated whether to transport her back to Bella for medical care. Seeking guidance, he implored Father Alberto to convey the situation to Padre Pio and ask for his counsel. Father Alberto relayed Maria Pia's dire situation to Padre Pio, explaining Gino's dilemma. "Gino needs your advice," Father Alberto began. "He wonders if he should take Maria Pia back to Bella. What should he do?" Padre Pio considered carefully before responding. "She should not be moved from the hospital. If she needs an operation, it should be done here, not in Bella." He assured them that he would pray to the Blessed Virgin for Maria Pia's healing, hoping to spare her from surgery. Several hours later, when the doctor examined Maria Pia again, he was astounded to find her completely recovered. The medical staff promptly discharged her from the hospital. This miraculous turnaround occurred on September 22nd, just one day before Padre Pio's passing, marking it as possibly his final miracle, a grace invoked by Padre Pio for the Blessed Virgin before his death. Marissa Liberati, a devoted follower of Padre Pio, regularly traveled from Rome to San Giovanni Rotondo to confess to him twice a month. She expressed her desire to bring her nieces, Lucia and Anna, to receive their first Holy Communion directly from Padre Pio's hands. In response, Padre Pio advised Marissa to have the girls receive their religious instruction in Rome. Once their preparation was complete, he joyfully agreed to administer their first communion. This exchange reflected Padre Pio's commitment to spiritual guidance and his desire to foster deeper religious devotion among his followers. These incidents underscore the profound faith and miraculous occurrences associated with Padre Pio, demonstrating his enduring spiritual influence and the extraordinary grace believed to accompany his life and ministry. Lucia and Anna diligently attended catechism classes and completed their sacramental preparations, yet their parents continually postponed their trip to San Giovanni Rotondo. Marissa, their aunt, regularly discussed this delay with Padre Pio. In mid-September 1968, Marissa had a vivid dream where Padre Pio urgently instructed her to bring Anna and Lucia to San Giovanni Rotondo as soon as possible. Upon waking, Marissa pondered the dream's significance and decided to cancel her planned pilgrimage to Lourdes. Instead, she purchased First Holy Communion attire for her nieces and, together with their mother, journeyed to San Giovanni Rotondo. It was September 22nd, a day filled with a sense of divine presence as Padre Pio, despite his frailty and illness, welcomed a crowded church filled with members of his global prayer groups. During Mass that morning, Padre Pio administered Holy Communion, beginning with Lucia and concluding with Anna, who became the last person to receive it directly from Padre Pio's hands. Tragically, Padre Pio passed away the very next day. Throughout his life, Padre Pio exemplified unwavering faith in God, despite enduring profound trials. His steadfast soul remained resolute until his death. He often preached, "In all the events of life, you must recognize the divine will, adore, and bless it, especially in the things that are the hardest for you." These events underscore Padre Pio's enduring spiritual influence and his profound connection with his followers. manifesting through visions, miracles, and unwavering faith. His legacy continues to inspire countless individuals worldwide, reflecting a life dedicated to serving God and His spiritual children. Always remember that God resides within us when we are in a state of grace, and He surrounds us when we are in sin. His angel never forsakes us. He remains our most sincere and steadfast companion, even when our actions make Him sad. Prayer, our most powerful weapon, is the key that unlocks God's heart. Approach God and others with humility, for He speaks only to the truly humble and showers them with His gifts. Humility and purity are our wings, lifting us toward God and making us almost divine. Remember, on earth, we are on a battlefield, and in heaven, we will receive the crown of victory. This life is a trial. The reward awaits us above. Earth is but a place of exile. Our true home is in heaven, towards which we must continually aspire. Jesus will guide you and grant you the grace to live a heavenly life. Nothing can separate you from His love. The Masses are infinite, just like Jesus Himself. Ask an angel about the Mass, and he will tell you, "I understand its purpose and offering, but I cannot comprehend its true worth." Every angel in heaven acknowledges its significance. The infant Jesus suffered and wept in the manger in order to make His suffering lovable, meritorious, and desirable for us. He embraced poverty in order to teach us to renounce our earthly possessions. He delighted humble, poor worshipers, teaching us to cherish poverty and value the company of the modest and unassuming over the allure of worldly greatness. Through His birth, Jesus signaled our mission to reject what the world admires and pursues. Why did Jesus Christ sacrifice Himself to death? Faith responds, to atone for our sins. And why did He rise in such magnificent splendor? He rose to unveil the genuine significance of our salvation. His death reminds us of our spiritual death due to sin. His resurrection offers us a perfect model of rising in grace. Just as Jesus rose immortal to a life of glory, so too must we rise immortal in the life of grace, as St. Paul urges. Our imperfections are inherent and accompany us to death. We must walk with our feet touching the ground, neither lying prostrate nor attempting to soar prematurely, for in matters of spirit, we resemble young birds yet to grow their wings. In our thoughts and confessions, we should not linger on sins already confessed. Through contrition, Jesus forgives them at the tribunal of penance, meeting our spiritual destitution with infinite generosity, like a benevolent creditor before a debtor unable to repay. He tore up and obliterated the promissory notes we signed with our sins' debts we could never repay without His divine mercy. Our suffering on earth is fleeting, but our reward in heaven is eternal. Stay calm, or at least resigned, trusting in the voice of authority without fear amidst life's storms, for the vessel of your soul will never sink. Jesus will never abandon you. Pray earnestly for the efficacy of my ministry, for I fear displeasing the Lord in my priestly duties. May Jesus orchestrate all things for His glory and our salvation. In heaven, all will be like spring in beauty, autumn in enjoyment, and summer in love, no winter, only perpetual joy. Here on earth, winter is necessary to cultivate self-denial and countless other virtues amidst challenges. Jesus, infinitely merciful, will grant you respite from the trials He sends. He is so good that He will never let hardships, no matter how severe, overwhelm you. Inspired by the unwavering faith of Padre Pio, may this channel be a beacon of hope and spiritual nourishment for all who seek to deepen their relationship with God. Let us journey together in faith, trusting in God's infinite mercy and grace. Subscribe to Faith in God for more stories of inspiration, prayer, and the eternal promise of heaven.